The history of the house on Cinnamon Street. The house on Cinnamon Street was originally owned by the Reilley family. Back when River City was new, the Reilley family grew wealthy from the sugar, rum, and spice. Eventually, they also owned the banks, the boats, the businesses, and all the buyables in town. Money begets money, and soon they were practically royalty in River City, untouchable and divinely ordained. But then the Great War came. Entire industries were retooled to support the war effort in Europa, Sealy, and Vespucci. Most of the workforce and the customers were drafted, impressed, or volunteered into the service for war. Even with government contracts selling to the heroes, the Reilley family felt they were not making enough money. So they opened their stores to the Central Cabal and opened their sales to the Villainous Legion. This choice did not make them popular with the populace populating River City. While most families were struggling to get by on rations or going hungry, the Reilley family threw lavish parties. While sugar was cut to near non-existence, the Reilley family had wedding cakes every time a villain visited. While schools were shut down, colleges closed, the Reilley family continued to have their private tutors. The people raged against the Reilleys, who owned everything and did nothing to help others. However, the Reilleys were protected behind their iron gates in their ivory towers. They were protected from the might of both man and magic. On one fateful night, however, someone ended their entire empire with a single symbolic slice. This is where notes and evidence got less solid and more towards stories and speculation. Someone broke into their house and killed all the people in the house. The entire extended family was killed, and only 3 remained as spirits: the mother, the father, and a girl that was believed to be their daughter. The police at the time didn't figure out who it was that did it, nor were they investigating all that hard, even back then. But eventually it was decided that nobody killed the family. That they all just died in their sleep by knife to the face. Their bodies were removed by the city and then buried in graves. However, all of the entire extended family members, only 3 remained to haunt the house where they were all killed. The lady of the estate and the matriarch of the family, Melody Reilley, who was the voice of the family and life, and in her death, her voice became her weapon as she now haunted it as a banshee. Her husband, Barnabas, was a hard-working but unobservant man in life before he married into money with Melody. In death, he continued his hard work, unobservant to the world that was changing around him. And finally, their son, Melvin Reilley, someone born into money and who was to inherit all property upon their death, but was killed alongside his parents. So therefore the properties were broken up amongst various business partners, or were just cannibalized by other wealthy families who saw opportunity in tragedy. There is something very wrong with the story, though. Already the biggest discrepancy was who Tiffany was. Time for Marceline to dig deeper to find out why the discrepancies, which would be very important. The ghost was someone considered to be their daughter, yet also the son, Melvin Reilley. Something isn't right here, and the answer was going to be found. Melvin was the name carved into the bullet, but there was no Melvin haunting the Reilley manor. The history of the building also lists Melvin as one of the ghosts haunting the house. There were a few different reasons why this could be, but Marceline would need to do some more research in a way that didn't involve the internet. Checking the likeliest solution first, she looked at the earliest photos of the ghosts and noticed that there were images of Melody and Barnabas, but there were no pictures of Tiffany, and the pictures of the bodies being taken away showed Melvin being taken away. The picture of Melvin in life showed the same chin as Tiffany, the same eyes, and even the same sad look. This was enough for Marceline to write it down in her notebook. She would need to check with Tiffany herself, but that still gave her enough to put the pieces together. Why the bullet didn't work, why the hunter thought Tiffany's name was Melvin, and finally a way to figure out who would stand to benefit from the house no longer being haunted. Pulling up more information from the database on the laws in River City on what happens to a building old enough to be counted as historic landmarks, the Reilley Manor was just a single year short of being declared a historical landmark. It would not be able to be torn down, ghosts or not. Combined with the fact that it was haunted means it was technically an imperial preserve, so it wouldn't be torn down as long as ghosts were haunting it. Still, an old broken down house, haunted by ghosts, one of which was loud enough to be heard well off the property, that was going to drive housing prices down around it. Great if you're a buyer, but going to be really bad if you're going to be a seller. So the question was there anyone in the area trying to sell? A very quick research into the properties for sale around the area found that all the houses were for sale by the homeowners association. The entire neighborhood for sale, the single lowest selling house was going for 100,000 centi. Very profitable for a house in River City, but still a single haunted house in the neighborhood could mean the asking price could be driven down. However, if the house was no longer haunted, then the house could be bought in auction by the homeowners association in the same neighborhood. Then it could be torn down and replaced. Then an entire neighborhood could be for sale. The asking price for each house could potentially quadruple to 400,000 centi each for 21 houses. Even factoring the cost of tearing down and building a brand new house, paying 14,000 centi for Ghost Hunter, and all the licensing for construction, the sudden jump in selling price would make those costs purse change in the comparison. What was the likelihood that Ghost Hunter would know about this? A better question is, what was the likelihood that the homeowners association would willingly tell him this information? Taking a snippet of the information, Marceline sent the information home to be printed out. This evidence was going to be very crucial for the proceedings that were going to happen. May even be her own silver bullet against Ghost Hunter. Now, with all the information she needed for the night, careful to back it up all in the haven. After all, one never knew when they needed their own backups in case hardware ever failed.